Part 1, expanded, 700 words. He woke on the edge of the desert with blood dried into the cracks of his palms and no memory of how it got there. The first thing he felt was the heat, the kind that cooked a man slowly, starting from the bones outward. The second thing he felt was the weight of the dog tag around his neck, tapping lightly against his collarbone with each shallow breath. He lifted it with trembling fingers. No name, no rank, just a number, scratched so violently it seemed someone had tried to erase even that small proof of identity. The sand beneath him was disturbed, boot prints circling his body, drag marks, signs of struggle. Someone had been here with him. Someone had left him alive, or assumed he was dead. He tried to rise, but the world spun in a dizzying blur. For a moment, he saw flashes, burning houses, silhouettes screaming, the thunder of horses, but they fell apart before he could grasp them. The desert spread out endlessly, a shimmering wasteland of gold and white. In the far distance, a crooked line of wooden roofs trembled under the heat haze. With no other direction to take, he staggered toward it, leaving a trail of uneven footprints behind him. By the time he reached Red Hollow, his throat was raw, his lips cracked, and his vision wavered like a mirage. Red Hollow wasn't a town so much as a stubborn cluster of buildings held together by dust and suspicion. Wagons with broken wheels lay half buried beside the road. A rusted windmill creaked in the hot wind like an old man groaning in his sleep. People watched him from doorways as if measuring the danger he carried. Women pulled children indoors. Old men narrowed their eyes. A pair of rough-looking ranch hands leaned forward, hands drifting toward holsters. He raised his hands slowly. "I'm not looking for trouble," he rasped. They didn't believe him. Why would they? A stranger appearing from the desert with blood on him and eyes sharp with instinct was hardly a good omen. The saloon's batwing doors were the only ones that didn't slam shut at the sight of him. He stepped inside, grateful for the shade. The room smelled of dust, whiskey, and secrets whispered too loudly. A piano in the corner had one broken leg propped up on a crate. A few patrons glanced his way, then looked away quickly, as if afraid of catching whatever curse trailed behind him. The bartender, a broad man with a grizzled beard and arms like tree trunks, looked him over with the caution of a man who'd buried enough trouble to recognize new trouble on sight. "You look like you crawled out of the grave," the bartender said. "Feels like it," the stranger answered. He drank the water offered to him as though swallowing pieces of himself back into place. "What's your name?" the bartender asked. The stranger opened his mouth, and nothing came. A hollow space yawned inside him where a name should have lived. "I don't know." The bartender raised an eyebrow. "No memory, none. Then you're a ghost, ain't you?" The name stuck to him immediately, fitting the empty space where his identity should have been. Ghost. Ghost didn't mean to stay long, but the moment he stepped outside, he felt the eyes again, the distrust, the unspoken fear. As if the whole town whispered the same warning. This place had room for trouble in only one direction, down into the graves scattered behind the church. Whispers reached him quickly. Red Hollow was ruled, or rather strangled, by Marshal Reddick, a man whose justice was so swift and merciless that even rattlesnakes slithered out of his path. People talked about him the way they talked about storms, with fear and inevitability. Ghost felt a strange tightening in his chest every time the man's name was spoken, as though a memory tried to claw its way up from the depths but drowned before reaching the surface. Just when he thought he'd slip out of town unnoticed, the saloon doors flew open. A boy, scrawny, dust-covered, and shaking, rushed inside, breath hitching in panic. "Please, someone help. They took my mama. Reddick's riders, they took her." Every man in the room stiffened, but not one moved. People looked away, hands tightening around drinks. No one dared stand against Reddick. Part 2, expanded, 700 words. The Blackstone canyons rose like jagged teeth from the earth, a maze made by giants with brutal hands. Towers of rock twisted into narrow passageways where the sun barely touched the ground, and echoes rolled endlessly, playing tricks on anyone foolish enough to enter without knowing the land. But Ghost moved as though the canyon had been carved with him in mind. The boy's directions guided him only so far. After that, instinct took over. He followed broken foliage, hoofprints pressed deep into the dirt, a snapped leather strap half buried under a rock. His fingers skimmed the cold surface of the canyon walls as he went, feeling the subtle tremors in the air. The silence in Blackstone wasn't natural, it was expectant, holding its breath. Ghost dismounted where the trail tightened. The horse snorted nervously, sensing what he did. Danger, recent and coiled like a rattler. Ghost whispered a steadying word he didn't recall learning. The animal calmed. That bothered him more than anything. How many times had he soothed a horse in his forgotten life? How many trails had he followed with deadly purpose? He crouched low, inspecting the ground. There were 3 sets of boot prints besides the woman's. 2 men had dragged her, a third had scouted ahead. Ghost followed the scout's tracks, weaving through crevices and climbing a ridge of stone that gave him a narrow view into a sunlit clearing below. There they were. The woman was tied to a wooden post, her dress torn and dust-stained, but her spirit unbroken. Her chin was raised in defiance despite the bruises on her face. 2 riders lounged nearby, Reddick's men, recognizable by the red scarves tied around their arms. One cleaned his rifle, the other sharpened a knife, humming a tuneless melody. Ghost felt something stir in him at the sight of those scarves. Something sharp, something scarlet. A memory brushed against his mind like the brush of a blade, him riding with the same scarf, wind whipping around him as he charged through smoke and fire. His stomach clenched, but the memory vanished before he could grasp it. He moved silently along the ridge, finding a descent point where shadows cloaked his approach. Each step was precise, instinctive. His body remembered a rhythm his mind couldn't. He slid behind a boulder and waited for the wind to shift, then struck. He threw a small stone far across the clearing. It clattered loudly. Both riders turned their heads. That was all he needed. Ghost dropped from the ridge like a shadow falling, landing behind the man with the knife. His arm hooked around the rider's neck, silencing him before he could shout. The rifleman spun around, raising his weapon, but Ghost reached for the fallen man's pistol with lightning accuracy and fired. The gunshot echoed like thunder trapped inside stone. The rifleman crumpled. Ghost stood still for a moment, chest rising and falling, the woman staring at him with wide eyes. She didn't scream. She didn't plead. She only watched him as though trying to piece together a story she had heard before. He knelt beside her, cutting the ropes with quick, gentle movements. "You're safe now," he said. She lifted her gaze to his, trembling, not with fear, but with a recognition that made his blood run cold. "You," she whispered, voice cracking. "I know you." Ghost froze. "How?" "You were one of them," she said. "One of Reddick's hunters." His right hand. The world tilted. Pain stabbed behind his eyes as images exploded, flames engulfing a homestead, Reddick shouting orders, Ghost following them with mechanical obedience. He saw his own hands doing terrible things. His own voice yelling for riders to move out. His own silhouette looming behind crying families. "No," he murmured, stumbling back. "No, that's not me." "It was," she said softly, tears forming. "But people can change." He clenched the dog tag in his fist until the metal cut into his palm. So he had been a monster. A weapon in Reddick's hand. The number on his tag wasn't identity, it was ownership. Part 3, expanded, 700 words. Dawn arrived not gently but as a blazing wall of gold that set the desert aflame. Red Hollow had never known quiet mornings, but that day an uneasy stillness hung over the town. People gathered in doorways, their breaths caught in their throats, as a line of dust rose on the horizon like a rising storm. Horses, dozens of them, moving with the precision of predators that knew exactly when and where to strike. Marshal Reddick had come. Ghost stood alone in the street, boots planted in dirt that felt strangely soft beneath him, soft like a grave. His revolver hung at his hip. His memories hung on his shoulders like chains still warm from the forge. The woman and her son waited behind him inside the saloon, peeking through the cracks in the shutters. The rest of the townsfolk watched from a distance, torn between hope and fear, because many of them sensed what Ghost had just begun to accept. He was the only thing standing between Red Hollow and annihilation. Reddick rode at the front of his men, seated on a massive black horse that seemed carved from the shadows themselves. His coat flapped behind him like wings of a fallen angel, and a scar cut a sharp white line through his beard. His expression was relaxed, almost amused, as if he were on his way to a poker table rather than a confrontation. "Well, I'll be damned," Reddick called out as he approached, voice deep and smug, carrying easily over the quiet town. "My stray dog found his way home." Ghost's jaw tightened. The dog tag on his chest felt heavy, like it wanted to drag him back into the dirt. "I didn't come back for you," he said. Reddick chuckled, dismounting with the grace of a man who had executed dozens of people without breaking a sweat. "Oh, I know what you came for. Answers, redemption, maybe even forgiveness." He stepped closer, boots crunching in the hard dirt. But you and I both know you're not built for that. You're built for killing. Built for me. Ghost felt a tremor run through him, not of fear, but recognition. Reddick had been a commander, a mentor, a master. Ghost had followed him through fire and blood, had obeyed without question. The number on his dog tag wasn't his identity, it was the order in which Reddick had broken men and remade them. You're wrong, Ghost said quietly. Reddick's eyes narrowed, the amusement slipping just slightly. You used to call me, sir, with respect, boy. Don't forget who saved you from the gutter. I'm trying to remember, Ghost murmured, but all I see is the gutter, and you standing in it. Reddick's fist tightened. Last chance. Step aside, and I'll pretend your little stunt in Blackstone never happened. Fight me, and I'll put you down like the dog you used to be. Ghost exhaled slowly. The air tasted of dust and endings. I'm not your hound anymore. The street exploded into violence. Reddick's riders drew their guns, but Ghost moved first, faster than thought, faster than fear. His revolver cleared the holster in a blur, and the first two shots cracked through the silence like lightning. Splitting the sky, two riders fell from their saddles. Horses reared, screaming. Townsfolk dove for cover. Reddick barked orders, firing with brutal precision. Bullets tore through wooden posts, shattered windows, kicked up showers of dirt around Ghost's boots. But Ghost moved like a man who had spent his entire life dodging death, because he had. And for the first time, he did it not to survive, but to protect. He ducked behind a water trough, reloaded with practiced ease, then popped up to fire again. A rider toppled, another screamed, chaos spread, and the riders, once an unstoppable force, began to panic under Ghost's relentless accuracy and terrifying calm. Reddick stormed forward, fury twisting his features. Face me, damn you. Ghost stepped into the open, heart pounding, but his hands steady. Reddick charged, firing. A bullet grazed Ghost's arm, hot and sharp. Ghost returned fire, one shot to Reddick's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Reddick fell to one knee, growling like a wounded wolf. You think killing me changes what you are? He spat, blood dripping from his mouth. Ghost approached slowly, gun trained on the man who had shaped his nightmares. No, Ghost said, but it changes what I'm going to be. Reddick lunged, reaching for his gun, but Ghost was faster. One final shot echoed across Red Hollow, silencing the desert itself. Reddick collapsed, eyes wide in disbelief. His shadow, so long and dark, finally dissolved in the rising sun. Silence followed, heavy, final. Then whispers. The townsfolk crept out of hiding, staring at the fallen tyrant and the man who stood over him. Ghost felt hollow, not triumphant, not relieved. Just free. For the first time since waking in the desert, the chains of his past loosened. A small hand tugged his sleeve. The boy looked up at him with gentle, unwavering trust. You don't have to be who he said you were, the boy whispered. You can be better. Starting now.